cult becomes a way to set the boundaries of acceptable beliefs and name others
and make sense of a collective that kind of went down this other path or
and
something.
so it's about like if you have the freedom to believe in whatever you want, that then leaves the door open to believing in crazy shit and dangerous shit. And so cult's a way to talk about that.
And then as soon as there is a like critical mass, then we have something to place onto that group. Welcome to Cult Favorite, the podcast that has never masqueraded as a CIA agent, never assumed a false identity of any kind that I'm aware of, for that matter.
As
I'm
a
Miranda
podcast,
Simmons.
no.
I'm Miranda Simmons, and you have like a Muppet mic today.
I have a Muppet?
Or it's like a big
mic.
fluffy kind.
I thought you were calling me Muppet Mike.
No.
I was like, I know I need a haircut.
I would never.
If you watch the show on video, which I think 11 of you do, you can
I would
see
never.
me need closer to a haircut.
Or like a kid karaoke or something. I don't know. Anyway.
I saw this TikTok the other day.
It's good to have options.
And it was like this very famous comedian. And he's doing like this podcast. And they have the same, like your mic, our fancy mics. But they're just like lounging on a couch with like holding it. And like we spent all this time and energy
so that
mic
we can
stands.
We're giving a favor, like we're doing a favor for our spines. We're like creating
anyways,
making it so that we can still have good posture.
And I'm Mike Altman, and this is my Muppet Mike.
Muppet Mike coming to you live.
Muppet Mike. And we are two religious studies professors trying to understand all of these cult documentaries that you can't stop binge watching.
And we're almost 40. This is our 39th episode. I just realized looking at this. Are we going to is our podcast going to have a midlife crisis? We'll see. I mean, stay tuned, sports fans.
It may be affected by my midlife crisis. That's all I can really say.
The podcast and you will get a haircut. If you'd like to support the show and help more people find us, follow us on Instagram or TikTok at Cult Favorite Pod. We're on all the socials.
That's supposed to be my job, isn't it?
I mean,
Content warning. So the documentary.
Just trying to be a good sidekick, man.
Yes, this documentary is got it centers around child sex abuse. So that's not what you want to listen to today. Skip to a later episode.
We are talking about Marcial Maciel, The Wolf of God, from HBO Max, 2025. It's brand new. It's to do with one figure inside of the Catholic Church, but, you know, of course, it's going to get into some institutional stuff. So what did you know before?
I mean, I knew about the Catholic Church's child abuse sex scandals and cases and the worldwide problem, but that was it. I didn't know about this specific story.
It really dominated the early aughts, right? The Boston Globe expose series drops in like 2002, I think it is, right?
Yes.
And so that's when this really started becoming a story. This is about one man, one priest inside of the bigger problem. And so here, and really, you know, the fact we talk a lot about like just what the cover image is of a documentary, what the title of a documentary is, how those kinds of renderings affect the narrative that we receive. And this one, I think, is a prime example of just how we do and do not use the category cult when talking about a leader of any stripe, really, with a following committing harms.
This did come up. The word cult was mentioned one time.
Was it? I didn't even catch that.
Early on in the description of the Legionnaires
I caught
of
several like references to his charisma.
Yes. Oh no, there's a lot of that and brainwashing. Like we'll get
brainwashing.
To that. But there's one mention. I believe it is the journalist.
Okay.
There's
several journalists we hear
New
from
England, the American journalist who wrote the article.
Jason Barry.
Yeah. I believe early on. I think like
New Orleans. Anyway, whatever. It doesn't matter. Okay. Maybe
it
it's
was a Hartford Current, wasn't it?
Yes. That's the
other guy.
But he lives. Okay.
He lives in New Orleans. You're right.
Anyway,
he's actually a historian in New Orleans. I realized. I found out later. No, he meant it was actually like in the intro montage.
Okay.
He mentions it, but it never really about the Legionnaires of Christ. And that's the only time it's mentioned. But yeah.
Okay, so what the documentary covers, excuse me, is the figure of Catholic priest Marcial Maciel and the formation of his congregation, the Legion of Christ. He was born in Mexico in 1920. He died in Jacksonville, Florida, of all places, in 2008. He had a mansion there, which we will get to. But he was described by one interviewee as the biggest criminal and the biggest fundraiser of the 20th century in the Catholic Church. And those two things really do go together in ways that we shall discuss. He brought in hundreds of millions of dollars. He endeared himself to Pope John Paul II, among others, and along the way, sexually abused more than 60 children over the course of his career. Here's what you'll have to edit. Sorry. I'm giving you jobs to do. Here's what does not get covered. Cult talk. Is there like a TikTok wing? Is there a wing of TikTok called Cult Talk?
There is Cult Talk.
Of course there is. Okay. Yeah. What did they deal with?
Cult? I mean, they talk about cults. They talk about
just like identifying them. Is it like to single, like
it's a lot of
call them out?
This is the culty group I was a part of.
Okay.
Here's news about cults, documentaries about cults. That video that we've used before on like that.
Oh yeah. Okay. That's part of that.
Yeah. There's a couple people who are big Cult Talk people.
Okay. This does not come up in this documentary hardly at all. Religious studies scholars also do not weigh in, importantly. It's mostly journalists, along with some of Maciel's survivors telling their stories.
Not even like Catholic studies or Catholic historians or anything like that.
So my question that I want to go ahead and put out on the table for us to think about is how we think this affects the narrative, the story that we receive, and what our readings of that story are if we're not getting it through that kind of cult filter. So there's not much in the way of explanation also regarding like how and why he was able to recruit early on. Yeah. Like he's only 21 when he starts building his own congregation, and it starts growing really fast. Like they talk about how he goes about recruiting folks to his mission and how he kind of cozies up to rich widows and stuff. And he's very charming, but there's not a lot of like how he builds infrastructure in the way that we make a cult of personality around so many of the leaders in other documentaries that we've seen that really take time to like describe this person as a person. Here's what makes them compelling. He's reaching out on this or that level, la la la.
That was, though, what I thought was, I actually noticed that too. And it reminded me of, I said the same thing about Synanon last time, that it just sort of jumped through like vague AA. And then now suddenly he's got people staying in this property in California. It had a similar feel.
Right.
To it.
Here's what happens in the documentary. There are 4 episodes. Each one is an hour. The story is such a long and involved one. And it's really symptomatic of a larger institutional dynamic. So that's what we're going to talk about because obviously, but I just want to hit some minimal highlights. Okay. So point 0 of Maciel's relationship to abuse and to the church, importantly, is that he's what's described as an effeminate boy. His father doesn't like this. He sends him to work for a mule driver who sexually abuses Maciel and a friend. He decides to join the seminary to escape. Yeah. So those two things are interlinked for him in a really important way. He has this vision with a lot of priests. So he starts recruiting young boys and men from small villages. So there's a break right there from like, he is a victim of abuse. He survives that by going to seminary. And then like what those early years were, it doesn't really get into, but it's not a lot of time between, because he's like 16 at this time. Right. And again, by the time he's 21, he's like really building a congregation. So he's recruiting young boys, excuse me, from small villages. He starts getting donors by targeting rich widows, which I guess is a strategy. And he gets space and structure that way. He builds a seminary named after Pius XII. His last name was Pacelli. He's the one that Pope is known I think mostly, would you say, as like the Pope during World War II.
Yeah.
And so he's got some problematic euphemisms for what's happening in the world at the time. Pacelli is also someone who is trying to just kind of keep this like precarious equanimity. Let's just not kind of, instead of calling out what was happening in Germany. Anyway, and other places. So Maciel gets ordained in 1944. So he's 24 at this time. A couple of years later, he takes advantage of an opportunity to move his seminarians to Comillas Pontifical University in Spain. This is described as like the Iberian Oxford. It's very prestigious. It's one of the biggest ones in Europe. And he keeps building structure and authority in that location among these young men who have been trained under him. So he's already kind of building this really insulated source of folks who can run this structure that he's
and to your
amassing.
Pius point earlier, this is also when, you know, Pius and then eventually Marcial are more, are tight with the Franco regime in Spain at this time too. So there's political cover and all that there too.
We see that a lot through this documentary, like his kind of business savvy or his way of reading what is happening politically and economically in a space and how he can respond to that for his own ends. So like
bureaucratic expertise.
The first president of Mexico that is a business person and not like a military leader. He takes advantage of that too. Anyway, so he convinces a bishop to formally recognize his congregation. He renames it Legionaries of Christ at this time. But the Vatican is already, he's in his mid-20s, and the Vatican is already getting complaints and says there needs to be an investigation. 1950s, Maciel is in Rome, buying favors, giving donations to the Vatican, cozying up to cardinals there. And at this point, he has, because the complaints and the investigations, they're not really going anywhere, but the Vatican's getting complaints. But he has 3 places at this point. He's got the Quinta Pacelli in Mexico, Hotel Antoneda in Spain, and then the Collegio Maximo in Italy.
Yeah.
The place that he got in Spain was because the Jesuits, once he moved seminarians there, were like, we don't like how you're trying to edge in and like take over, and so please leave. So they sent them like a few miles away, but then he buys this giant hotel and creates a seminary out of it. He also at this time creates the Cumbres Institute. I'm probably pronouncing everything incorrectly, I apologize, in Mexico. At that place, he is educating children of elites. So it's again part of this business acumen and this vision that he has. Mid-50s is also seeing a formal investigation into some of the complaints that are being received, but all of the boys lie because he has a vow that everyone has to take, not only just like poverty and chastity and obedience or whatever, but also
the 4th vow.
You do not get to critique your superiors. You don't get to critique authority. And you have to like, you know, tell on the people who do.
Which is is kind of the same as the whole not being not go to someone privately that was in the Duggars documentary and the Hillston documentary. Like, you know, it's
there are lots of overlaps.
Oh yeah, no, for sure.
but interestingly, very different rhetoric. So, so all the boys lie and, you know, call him a saint and he's the best. He's still removed because the person leading the investigation can tell that they're all lying. But he gets reinstated because of a bribe just a couple of years later. This is, you know, at the time that Pius XII dies. And by the late 60s, he's taking a cue from Opus Dei. And that's what gives him an institution called Regnum Christi, the secular branch of the Legion. And that includes women and is really just like this operation of growth and recruitment.
Yeah. It's a bunch of lay people that'll do stuff
for little wage. Okay, I should have brought my water today. In 1978, John Paul II, the first non-Italian pope in some centuries, takes the helm of the Catholic Church. Maciel is seen as an ally in his fight against communism straight away. John Paul II makes like 5 trips to Mexico over the next few decades.
In the context of the fear of communism in Latin America.
10,000%.
Right.
So when John Paul comes into power, Maciel really experiences the height of his own heyday.
So many pictures of him and John Paul.
Sure.
Like, over and over and over again.
Yeah. And at this time, he's also building companies in Panama. It's a big tax shelter. He's getting married, because why not?
Did he get married twice?
I don't know, man.
That was
the
very
details
confusing.
were very fuzzy.
There's like the one person he meets, the one woman he meets who's like 19 in Tijuana.
Yeah.
But who had 2 kids already.
But then there's Norma.
Or a kid already. And then there's the Normas. So it seems like he had multiple.
I don't know, man. I think he gets, and he has a few of his own biological children. The Vatican apparently knows about this. John Paul, in fact, gave communion to several of his biological children.
Yeah.
It was just not a big deal, But he's abusing them too. So, cut to 2002. The Boston Globe publishes its expose series about priests' involvement with abuse and cover-ups in the Catholic Church. Just a couple of years before that, Jason Berry and Gerald Renner, who you mentioned a bit ago, do a story collaboratively in the Hartford Courant. That's 1997. A magazine in Mexico picks it up. They've been gathering the stories of some of Maciel's survivors. There's a documentary on Channel 40, and that kind of kicks stuff off in Mexico. But it took some years, from 1997 to 2002. There weren't a lot of people really engaging in this story. Yeah. They thought it was going to get picked up immediately.
Well, he's a celeb. They do, and then part of it is he is this national celebrity in Mexico.
Totally.
It's like America's, or not, like Mexico's priest in a certain level.
Yeah. So inside of that context of here are people trying to pay attention to the story, we're also hearing from some of his survivors, most predominantly Juan Vaca, who becomes kind of the head of the Legion in the U.S., but was abused by Maciel for 12, 13 years. Jose Barba and Alejandro Espinoza. So those are 3 of the people that we hear from. They tell their stories in detail. We also hear about Maciel's long-term addiction to painkillers and his, he was taking injections of morphine, but involving the boys in making them complicit in this illegal drug acquisition and getting false scripts and stuff.
Well, and there's the amazing scene where he's had a near overdose and
Vaca saves
his life. And you can just tell, as he's recounting the story. To me, that was the emotionally richest moment of the whole thing. It's he's you get this realization, he could have let him die right there.
But there was so much nuance, and I mean, I really did feel a lot of I thought that as tends to be the case, right? When we hear the stories from the people who experienced life around this person, there is a spectrum of responses and what they continue to live with after the fact. So there's that, kind of crossroads moment for Vaca. But then Espinoza talks later about of course I forgive him because I have to for me.
Yeah.
And so if I saw him now, I would embrace him and forgive him freely and totally. And then you've got Barba saying we had to tell our stories, and I hope that the media does what's right by our stories.
Yeah.
But I wish I never had to. Would have been cool if the guy had just become a saint, because for what the cost has been just in telling the story. And we don't get a lot of explanation about what that is, right? The documentary itself does not spend time in what the cost is. We do hear about like what these men take as death threats to themselves. They get followed. There's lots of surveillance that's happening after they defect and leave the organization. But from what we are able to gather, I mean, obviously the process doesn't just stop with the abuse itself. Like it is this ongoing thing that they have to live with.
Because they've at least, I think they're all, and John Barry wrote the articles, and then Barry and Renner wrote a book, and then Barry also produced another documentary in like the late 90s, early 2000s, like before the Spotlight series.
Oh, okay.
I think that's right. I was looking at it. So so they're telling this in a way not dissimilar from like the Jonestown documentary from a year ago. Like it's the same people who have been telling these same stories over and over again.
Well, so the Vatican's response to, like, once that series gets released, once the story does get picked up and it's impossible to ignore, the Vatican finally responds, but so Ratzinger, who gets kind of presented as a little bit of like a hero who cleans up the mess that John Paul left. I didn't love that.
There's a sense that
he's problematic too.
Yeah, even as a cardinal, he was already he was aware
getting the investigation going.
Of Maciel and standing in the way of things and trying to
So, but you know, that leaving that aside, Maciel is removed to, quote, lead a reserved life of prayer and penitence. So
he gets a timeout.
He gets a timeout. So like, you know, I'm glad that the investigation like finally got going and stuff, but that's what its ultimate like effect was. And that also does not mention at all his victims. So Vaca, responds to that himself and is like, it was a wrist slap. It wasn't actually anything that canon law suggests that you do.
He wants him to be labeled an apostate and an atheist.
Yeah, there is
defrocked and
there is a process that you could follow if you wanted to. But so in this life of ostensible prayer and penitence, Maciel travels a bunch, stays in a lot of really nice hotels, and keeps abusing children who are being trafficked in Thailand. The Vatican says, finally, like, dude, you for real need to stop or we will expose you.
Because they hire people to follow him.
Yeah. I mean,
like it doesn't even like the Vatican was like
the Legion did this,
right,
though.
The Legion hires people to
fire. Yeah. So they hire people to follow him, and Ratzinger gets a person to one of the vicars to say like, dude, stop or we're going to like expose what you did. That is when he moves to a mansion in Jacksonville, Florida, next to a golf course. As his health deteriorates, when he dies, he's 87. So he has a nice long life, and he has pancreatic cancer, I believe it is. And as he is like on what will become his deathbed, surrounded by seminarians who are praying for him fervently, they, of course, want him to go to heaven, and so he needs to confess. He refuses to do so and is incredulous at even the suggestion that he needs to. So his anger at the prospect of confession suggests to the legionaries that he's possessed.
Yeah.
And so they call an exorcist because, like, we legit have to either, like, exorcise this evil spirit,
right,
or get him to confess in good faith, because
it's such a weird moment, because it's like everybody knows.
Yeah.
Like everybody knows.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's documented. There are paper trails. No, 100%. But also.
But he won't.
Yeah. So.
And they want him to, so he'll go to heaven. Like the whole thing.
The whole thing. So they get an exorcist. We don't we don't also get a lot of details about like how all of that panned out.
No, there's a really weird pic, like really kind of,
I know,
a photo that's just kind of like
a lot of the images and the dramatizations and
the reenactments. Yeah, but there's this one photo of him sort of mouth agape,
yes,
like on his deathbed, and you're just like,
I could have done without the photos.
What's happening?
So anyway, Pope John Paul, as I said, knew about Maciel's kids. He gave communion to them. There was not, in the, I think it was the 60th anniversary of the Legion of Christ, the Pope at that point was very near to his own expiration. But he was still kind of trotted out as like, there was very much this tether between the top of the Vatican and the Legion of Christ. So Maciel dies and the fallout is kind of nil. Like his image gets removed from the congregational, facilities. No one really talks about him. We have this one like anonymous interviewee who is, I guess, a member of the Legionaries who like doesn't want to be named. And so that's what he says, that like nobody really talks about him anymore. And I think it's Barry. Is it I think it's Jason Barry who asks near the end of the documentary, like, why is the Legion of Christ still part of the Catholic Church? Mm-hmm. So if there's this paper trail, if we know all these things, then like, why is this still a, consecrated, like formal arm of the Catholic Church? This group would ultimately admit to 175 cases of child sexual abuse by 33 priests. Maciel himself would abuse 60 children that we know of. So you knew this would be a meta conversation.
Yeah.
Throughout the documentary, they play out the greatest hits: separation of people from their families with no contact, a vow of not critiquing authority, financial malfeasance, strict control of information access, exploitation of power in the name of religion, charismatic leader who is able to recruit for his mission. An attack on him is cast as an attack on the church. There are attacks on those who defect, but there's no cult speak, Michael.
There's no cult speak.
How come? And what do we think about that? And what do you want to talk about in general? That's my tee up.
I mean, we could talk about the cult speak. The lack of cult speak is, I think, well, part of it is, I wonder. So two things. One, this is not the official title is actually Marcial Maciel Lobos de Dios.
Sure.
So it's produced.
It's a Spanish language documentary.
Produced for Warner Brothers Discovery for WBD that ends up on Max.
Right.
So what was interesting to me was we don't have that cult language. The only other doc we've watched that was not produced for an American audience was the Cult of Fear.
Yes.
Right? Which has cult in the title.
Totally. Because I was wondering, like,
they use that language a lot.
I was wondering if where you were going to begin with was like, is the cult documentary media phenomenon a specifically American one in a way that,
So that's what I think is interesting, is that it has all of the sort of genre tropes of an American cult documentary.
Yeah.
But
is that discourse maybe a English language?
But it doesn't. Yeah, but I think there's something about it that it is interesting that this then is done for a non-American audience. What does that look like? What does that mean? So I think that part to me, I think partially explains it, because I don't know, I'd be curious to know, is there a genre of church expose as a thing that this is like Catholic expose as a thing that is you can find throughout Latin America, right?
Yeah.
I know that's not the answer you want. I know it's not the answer you want.
I don't want an answer, Mike. I want inquiry and conversation.
Right. I mean, the obvious piece.
I don't think you're wrong.
Right. the obvious piece is also that it's about the Catholic Church, right? But in the same way,
well, what do you mean by that, though?
well, in the way that it's about one of the most powerful quote unquote religious institutions in the world, that it's something that's mainstream, that it's something that's down the street for a lot of people, certainly for the Spanish speaking audience of the documentary.
And so the more we familiarize ourselves with a thing, the more loath we are to attach othering devices,
right,
rhetorically to it.
And it's so in that sense, I think it's more comparable to like the Hillsong documentary, which also no one really said cult,
except for the people who had been members of it. Like, so too with the Shiny Happy People. Like,
I guess
Shiny Happy People, you've got like,
they're trapped.
I mean, I'm trying to remember in Hillsong. Maybe
I think it was a lot less than
a lot less.
Maybe and I think part of that is I don't get this sense. I don't know, but it seems like most of the men who are speaking in the survivors who are in the documentary they're not priests anymore, but most of them still seem. I don't think they're Catholic in some sense. I don't know what, right? They're not.
Yeah, we don't know.
And so when the critique is launched, or when it's launched from a place of like, this is not how it's supposed to be in the church, whether that church is the Catholic Church or the Protestant American Church or whatever, I think it elbows out the cult thing because it becomes a internal kind of situation, right? That then gets put forward for people who are on the outside for a variety of reasons.
I wonder if then, because I think you're right on all of those counts, and I definitely think it's multifactorial. Like, I don't think it's, just because we're cool with Catholicism and so that's the only reason. Like, I wonder if there's also, there's that kind of scholarly adage that like religious tradition, or what is it called? Something plus cult plus time equals religious tradition, or something like that.
There's that whole sociological
I wonder
theory.
if there's like a way in which the label of cult is not just an othering mechanism, but also something that only makes sense when applied as shorthand to something that we're still trying to adjudicate in some way. Like, the jury has come back on is Catholicism, like, is Christianity and the Catholic Church a recognized religious tradition that will continue to whatever be the kind of economic and political machine, it's spiritual, like all of the things that it is. And so since the jury's come back on it, it doesn't really do a lot of, like, we're not trying to render judgment on it. It's not a like fringe case that we are calling, because a lot of the things that a lot of these documentaries, it's like a live question: is it a cult or not? Or
The Garden, cult or commune?
Well, or Synanon. Did the Cure become a cult or whatever? And I don't know. I mean, I don't even know that I have like a fixed answer to that. I'm just kind of trying it on. Like, I wonder if because we do not mind calling things cult when they have nothing to do with religion. So religion isn't the linchpin,
right? Right. We have the cult of American Apparel, the
cult of fast fashion, whatever.
Yeah.
So I wonder if there's, Let
me come at it from another angle.
Yeah.
Thinking about this as not as someone who is not an expert in Latin American religion, but thinking about it, if we're talking about a documentary about the Catholic Church for an audience, Spanish-speaking audience that we could assume is coming at it from within a Catholic inflected culture, right? Then it makes me wonder if the lack of cult here is actually about the way cult is particularly tied up with a kind of lowercase p Protestant sensibility. Because if you're in from a Catholic perspective, certainly from a very conservative Legionnaires of Christ, Opus Dei, that world of Catholicism perspective. I mean, because a lot of the other piece of this is he was not staunchly, but he was part of the group trying to recover the church from Vatican II.
Yes.
So if you think about this as a kind of traditionalist Catholic perspective, then everything that's not the church is already a cult in a way, and other, right? And so there's a sense that then like that the word, if it's like this is the church and salvation is in the church, and so anything happening outside the church is already wrong, right? We're already in, right? Then that's a really different perspective than a kind of Protestant understanding of like, well, it's about having the right individual beliefs, and people come to different versions of those, and so well, what's the difference between a Methodist and a Presbyterian and a Pentecostal? Well, then you start to, and like there's degrees of difference from where you are. That cult functions as a kind of sideline, the boundary of where the playing field is, in a way that it isn't necessary in a kind of Catholic culture. Does that make?
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, as I have long opined, I think that I think that the word cult helps us feel safer. Like, I think that identifying scary things is something that alleviates anxiety.
Right.
And so I think that the way that we put distance between ourselves and thus the norms that we have internalized, the distance that we put between those and something else that we call cult makes us feel more secure about what we've internalized and those norms and the things that are familiar. So in that way, like it is highly functional for, we haven't done one of the documentaries on the FLDS yet.
No.
I don't think, right? And Warren Jeffs. But like, it is a very quick designation that gets placed on like, we're comfortable now, weren't always, but like as a social society in the US, we're comfortable calling Mormonism a religion, but the FLDS, we talk about it as a cult.
Right.
Like, and that designation is really functional because this is the thing we've done the work to familiarize.
Yeah.
And so that's, but this is a place where there are wrongs being enacted, and we'll, I don't know, place it in that camp. But it's just interesting to me when that othering, I mean,
I think part of it is, this is an interesting question, right? The comparative cultural function of the term cult. Because I think you're right. I think that if you're working within a social, political, cultural world that has been shaped by kind of Protestant, or sometimes I don't like this term, but the kind of what people call the Protestant secular, like the secularism that assumes it's about your individual choice to believe in X or Y, right? Then cult becomes a way to set the boundaries of acceptable beliefs and name others
and make sense of a collective that kind of went down this other path or
and
something.
So it's about like if you have the freedom to believe in whatever you want, that then leaves the door open to believing in crazy shit and dangerous shit. And so cult's a way to talk about that.
And then as soon as there is a like critical mass, then we have something to place onto that group.
And so you get this movement where, Mormonism is a cult in the 19th century.
Yeah.
Even as late as like when Mitt Romney was running for president, Jeffress, the First Baptist Dallas pastor, was like talking about him being in a cult.
Yep.
But then fast forward 10 years and it's all good. And the cult's the failed yes.
Yeah.
In a Catholic perspective, where this is happening with a congregation in the church that looks a lot like that is initially modeled on the Jesuits, and then he's sort of stealing models from Opus Dei. It's happening institutionally. I think that the cult term is probably going to show up if we were talking about things like blends of Catholicism with indigenous traditions around the world. That stuff that is not about a group that takes a set of weird beliefs too far, but a group that is actually, I don't want to fall into the Catholics or practice, Protestants or belief, but kind of like that are doing these practices that are extra outside of the church and bringing those in. Like that's where I think we would see that, right? Like folk cults and right, because I think that what you would more likely see, and you do see, is conversations about this sort of stuff in terms of that's in the church, in terms of like the demonic. Like the fact that they go to an exorcism at the end signals to me of an understanding that what was happening here was, if we want to take the move to a kind of transcendent, non-material, non-political explanation for everything bad that happened around this man is the demonic, not a cult, right? And so I think there's something about the context and the way the Catholic framing of all of this, and the fact that it's all happening that this is a Spanish language documentary for a Spanish speaking audience. I think that
but if it were an American documentary, like we've talked about, but it's, they're like 9 episodes. And so, but for the limits of space and time, like there's that, I think it's CNN or something, like a 9-part documentary on the Pope.
Yeah.
And it's called, the most powerful man in the world or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's so I guess my question is, like, obviously that doesn't use cult either, even though it's talking about a charismatic leader who is the most powerful man in the world.
Yeah.
So I take, like, your point about contextual specificity is well taken. Do you think, though, that if it were an English language documentary made by Jason Barry, that it would be a cult documentary?
No.
I don't think so either. And
in part because it's the Catholic Church and it's familiar.
Yeah.
But also in part because I don't think, well, first of all, I think it's like Barry is also Catholic, and he writes a bunch for the National Catholic Order, but also because I think the cult language has already been used on Catholics before, earlier, and so there's a kind of,
well, and just in a very like innocuous, I mean, like this is where religious studies stuff will not take you into the weeds, dear listener, but like the evolution of just the term cult, like is, I mean, it has like a lot of its early formations are inside of, contexts like Catholicism, where you've got like the cult of the Virgin or whatever, just
but also like anti-Catholic rhetoric from whether you want to talk about like the 19th century. Like that's the really bizarre, like,
that's the thing. So like, did we already adjudicate it? You know what I mean?
We did.
Did we already,
we called them like, you think of like when you look at the
and we came to our designation, and so
the name of the book escapes me. The one about, there's this book that comes out in the 19th century about allegedly written by a former nun about the monastery where all the nuns.
Oh my God, in Quebec,
Maria Monk.
Yes, I was just learning about this recently.
Yes. Which actually, having just used a Satanic Panic documentary in my last class that I was just talking about Michelle Remembers, it's interesting to compare those two. So
I think Sarah Marshall does.
Sign up for that. So there we go. She's in that documentary.
Good old Sarah Marshall.
She's in that documentary.
Love her.
Yeah.
Shout out to
Satan Wants You. Go watch that if you find it. But yeah, so I think that there's a way that we Americans already did this, and then on top of that, there's this weird thing where you have a accusation, anti-Catholic accusations meant to, leveled at this church that were completely fabricated. Then behind that comes this scandal that is not, right? And so there's this weird parallel there. So yeah, I think you're right. I think it's familiarity, but I also think that it's because we've already done that Americans have already done this with Catholics. Although you will start to, I bet if you went and looked at the edges of American Catholicism around like the charismatic Catholic movements, you might start to find it there.
Maybe.
But why do you think it's important to mark it that way?
Why
do you think it's important to mark that they don't use the word cult here?
Oh, No, because I think that we should be really careful not to think that when we say the word cult, we're like talking about a stable thing.
Yeah.
That like that is a functional term that we use for our own ends. That is, whether we're trying to kind of make a judgment call on something, whether we're trying to referee some sort of behavior, whether we're trying to create some sort of expose so we can call somebody into account. But like so I think that if we pay attention to when cult is used and when it is not, then maybe we can be a little slower with our lightning speed shorthand that assumes a lot of things when we use words like cult.
Especially when we're getting into a world of like, we're not even into the noun of cult anymore. We're getting into these like adjectives of cultish or cult-like or culty.
Yeah.
And it's just like,
well, so simultaneously it becomes so it's like the term religion, right? Like it simultaneously becomes so amorphously ubiquitous that it can apply to anything. The new smoothie place has a total cult following, like whatever. And also we are able to continue reserving it to designate some real harms. And so there's this, it is like a lot of words, this kind of empty ideological container into which we can put our anxieties and our desires and our purchasing power and our media consumption. And we can, it shape shifts depending on what it is that we're putting into it. And I think that we should pay attention to that. Plus too, like the fact that, it's used to name a collective while also identifying this typically, singular, charismatic, whatever kind of figure. This one has a lot of that, right? Like it's the dude's face with like flames in his eyes.
So many pictures of this
and it's
guy.
The wolf of God. Like it's about him.
Yeah.
And so there's that, like what you were saying about a sort of Protestant ethos that identifies belief as an individual thing, but meanwhile, we still we extend that, I think, to a lot of our social renderings of a person in charge that we don't know what to do with. It's not a symptom of this larger institutional construct. It's this kind of bad apple.
Yeah. So two things on that. One, because if you know a lot of your audience is going to be Catholic, you have to tread lightly. I think that's why Ratzinger gets, gets the thing he gets, right?
Sure.
And I think on top of that, I think
and even John Paul was kind of posited as sort of like someone who was duped, not as someone who was actively covering things up for his own like institutional gain, right? 100,000%.
The John Paul treatment actually reminded me of, we haven't done anything on this, but it reminded me of Joe Paterno and Larry Sandusky, and the way that Paterno is like, like
sure.
Not the way most
we want to like. We love this coach, but he was involved in something pretty
and he was
slimy.
And the apologists for Paterno, when they took his statue down and all that, were always like, no, he was fooled. And the evidence is
that's it.
Clearly says to the contrary, but that was the apology
because this person is a master manipulator.
Yes.
And no one could help but be sucked into the wiles of
I also think too, though, like the emphasis on. So this also, I think, goes to your question about like how he was able. They don't really have like a how he was able to do this.
Yeah.
I think he was able to do it because he was a priest, right?
Yes.
Like, and I think that a huge part of this, and so to the same part,
there's built-in authority and reverence,
and
deference.
All of the images of him, all the pictures of him, all of that is in some ways focused around like. that is I think especially to a Catholic audience, it's like, this is a priest, and this is a priest who did horrible things.
Yes.
And who was a wolf instead of a shepherd, et cetera, right?
Totally.
And so, of course, it's focused around these pictures of him, because behind all that is this, like, it's the image. It is a familiar image of a priest that the audience then knows what's going on behind that, right? And so there's this ongoing, dramatic irony of what the picture shows: a faithful priest kissing the Pope's hands, and what the audience knows as they're watching of this is an abuser who is, and it's funny because, like, even I've mentioned in the past, growing up, my dad was a pastor. Like, even amongst Protestants, people just give you stuff.
Sure.
It's like, oh, I heard you needed a car. Sure. Here's not a new car, like, but like,
sure.
You need to go to the beach. Here's a weekend
because we're supporting the mission.
Yeah,
we're supporting God's faithful.
And these were middle class evangelicals. This was not even like, and it's not rich Catholic widows.
Well, and Maciel, like, his strategy, along with like meeting rich widows, but the boys that he recruited largely were from small villages. He would go, and like, it was an opportunity for one of the children to come to the seminary that was an institutionally, like, already designated as, if not prestigious, at least like stable. It's a career. It's a,
Yeah. And I appreciated that it was 4 45-minute episodes, but I think there's a lot of context about what kind of boys from what kind of families in Mexico decide to end up becoming priests, or they're shoved into it, or I mean, because
it's a very different group that he then later has, like, a school for the children of elites.
Yes.
That's a different school.
I mean, I don't know.
And that's like more of the like secular wing, because they're not going into the clergy.
And they don't talk about this, but I'm assuming that's where he's making a ton of money.
Oh, 1,000%.
Stuff, right?
Yes. Because he's now also not only the like headmaster of a school or whatever, but he's now the priest, like the personal clergyman for these elite families. And so then they're just like, giving their pastor a weekend at the beach or whatever.
And like in some ways it's similar to what's it called? Yoga Fire? No, whatever.
Breath of Fire.
Breath of Fire.
Yeah.
Yoga Fire.
The Kundalini yoga. Yeah.
Yoga Fire is like a video game move. From Street Fighter.
Sure.
But the 3HO, they have the similar thing where after his death they come to terms with the yogi's sort of abuses and have to deal with it. But in that case, and what's similar is like, if you are a family in Mexico sending your son off with this priest to go to seminary, there is a kind of giving up. It's like giving away of the child, right? In a way that's very different than the rich kids that are going to this other school, right?
Sure.
And that is more similar to what we see in Cult of Fear with those schools, or in these other places where there's been these schools that parents are sending kids to with an understanding that that there's some change in parental role, right? Because there was a kind of group parenting we saw in Synanon. There's a kind of sense of like a shared parenting in 3HO.
Right.
So it's like when there has to be some sort of change in the parental function that allows this, which is very different than there was a lot of horrible abuse in Teen Mania, but it was like physical trauma and emotional. There was not a lot of the
Vaca talks about that, of like, I was separated from my family, and so he was my priest and my mentor, but he was also my father figure. He was also my mother figure. Like when like that was a very strategic move. And we don't have time for this question, but I'm just going to put it out there. Like with the Cult of Fear, you're right that like it's another production that is made outside of North America for a different audience. Cult rhetoric is all over the place in that one, but like that's not a fringe group inside. Like that's Hinduism, right? Like that wasn't a fringe group inside. I mean, it was, right? But like, so
yeah, but there's an ongoing conversation in India about guru movements in particular because they're relatively new in the history of India.
So that's why, because I was trying, when you were talking about like the difference, I was like,
they're similar. So at the same time that Mexico is moving forward with its rise of the middle class, not the same time, probably a little later, because I'm thinking 70s and 80s in India. But it's the similar trajectory of you have a bourgeois class, and then out of that class comes these guru movements, and there's a lot of them, and a lot of them have scandals. So there's actually, and I think, I don't know, this would be a great question for somebody I know smarter than me, who knows India better, but like, I know that the term cult is in some ways already up and running in India to talk about these different groups.
Right.
Partially because of the British presence and the whatever. So there's kind of that cultural baggage floating around in the rhetoric.
Right.
And so I think there's a way that, I think there's a way that it actually, India is more like the United States in that it has this diversity of movements and gurus and things that look, so that people, whether it's Osho or Satya Sai Baba or the cult of fear guy, Aram Bapu. So like, I think that's probably just more in the water.
Okay. That makes sense. That satisfies
because it has a constitution a lot like the United States is in terms of religion.
Right. So,
but yeah.
What's your takeaway?
I
What
think
do we do with all this?
The line at the end of the final episode, someone says, not the monster. Don't look at the monster, meaning Maciel, but look at the network, meaning everyone who enabled it and made it work and made it keep going.
Sure.
And so a few people at the end point to this.
Yeah.
But it doesn't get pointed to until the end. It's not the point for most of the docuseries. And so I think that we've come back to this all the time, but the complicity and the systems that make this possible. And I think that I think John Barry is a really interesting example as someone who I think is Catholic and is invested. Jason Barry.
Yeah.
John Barry is a basketball player. Jason Barry, who is invested in the church and the well-being and existence of the Catholic Church worldwide.
Yeah.
But because of that, wants to point to the systems.
So and I guess what I find curious and interesting from a scholarly perspective is just how those differentiations in narrative storytelling and explanatory devices, like how those work and what the machine is behind that rhetorically.
Yes.
I mean, in a similar sense, speaking of like language and rhetoric, like some of Juan Vaca's letters to Maciel, and we hear a lot about his letters. Like that's its own whole subplot that could be
disappear.
Oh my gosh, there's a whole like we didn't have time to get into that, but Juan Vaca writes letters over the years to Maciel, to the Pope. Some of those are available online. Like, I mean, so go look those up, like learn the people's names and their stories. At one point, he like chronicles like here in bullet point, like here list. Here are just some of the people I've talked to personally.
Yeah.
Boom, 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 boom. And I think it's useful to like give attention to the human costs involved in unwieldy institutional machines.
Yeah.
And I think that he's a good example of that. And he's someone who really tried to shed light on that. I think so often in highlighting the charismatic figure, as we've discussed, you simultaneously can sideline both the structural apparatus that made that person possible, as well as the specificities of the humans who got hurt.
Yeah. I think it's really hard when the documentary is really built around survivors, when it's this sort of documentary about a series of abuse cases.
Yeah.
And you're trying to focus on the survivors telling the story. Because if that's the narrative kind of framing, the abuser is not going to be a full person in a network in those stories.
Right.
They, and I think, so it's really hard to do both. And
I
think they aim at it a bit. And so I'm not, and
this is, none of these are,
it's very hard to do both.
None of this, like, no example, none of the documentaries is going to be perfect for exactly that reason. But, and this is like a conversation that I have with my students all the time, like, what it means to be a curious scholar is to try to hold those different things in tandem with some sophistication and nuance without just kind of landing on making a call like a referee, but also keeping up and running. Like, there is this institutional network making this possible.
Oh, yeah.
There is also this person who is like this kind of whatever personality that is using certain kinds of social devices and techniques to create a network of their own.
Yeah.
These are the people involved, and these are their stories, and what, like, so where all of that starts and stops in relation to each other is just a trove of insider-outsider questions, of sociological and like social formation questions, power dynamics, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It doesn't mean that we're ever going to be able to like somehow, I don't know, manage all of it with any kind of like totality.
Yeah.
But I think that if we have a sense of what those dynamics are, then maybe we can be a little bit, we can take a little bit more time and consideration before just kind of like wielding rhetorical devices as like blunt instruments, you know?
No, I think that's right.
So yeah, I think we should also pay attention to where we find cult in the wild.
I would say
when we find the term a reasonable label.
Before we get to the cult favorites.
Yeah.
When I was looking around about this, I happened upon in the R Catholicism subreddit, someone had posted about the documentary about a month ago. And one of the top comments was, "My pastor is in the LC. Here is the email he sent to all parishioners."
Whoa.
"Dear parishioners in Christ, I would like to inform you about an HBO program recently released named Marcial Maciel, El Lobo de Dios, the Wolf of God. Traces the story of the founder of the Legion of Christ, the congregation I belong to. Since 2009, when allegations against the founder became known and declared true, we have worked with the church to renew the congregation at all levels. One of the Legion's priests was interviewed for this documentary because in this process, we have wanted to be fully transparent, although the priest was hidden away. It is not an easy thing to watch. I wanted you to know about this from me before you may hear about it or see it. I am praying for victims and anyone who has been hurt in the course of our history. Thanks for your prayers for me and my fellow legionaries." So it's interesting to think about the on the ground effects of this particular documentary, in a way that, like, I don't know. We could probably find that for the Hillsongs and the IBLPs and the whatever, but I just, that came up almost immediately because I think because this had so much little other media response.
We also, yes. And one of the things that we don't get a lot of in the documentary is, I mean, so there's Barry's question about just like, why are they still part of the Catholic Church because of these abuses? But I have more of a, like, I don't know if it's I guess it's just an ethnographic or a theological question of like, what is it that they, like, what is the differentiation that makes them a subset worth continuing to disaggregate? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, what is because all that we heard was really like, this was a congregation built by Maciel, for Maciel, because of Maciel, like, to the betterment of Maciel.
This is where we need a 20th century Catholic historian. Because my guess is it's a Vatican II response. And and my guess is this is part of that traditionalist backlash.
Maybe. So we'll have to do more research.
All of the Catholic scholars out there, write me an email. And tell me. Okay.
Okay. So
what's your favorite?
Well, it's late September, whether I want to admit it or not. And so we're coming up on the end. ish.
It'll be late October when this this episode comes out, so it'll be better.
Okay, right. So the end of 2025 is in sight, for better or worse, and I have, to that end, I recently ordered my Nikki McClure calendar.
Okay, I don't know what that is.
Oh, you should look her up. So she does these beautiful paper cut prints, uses like an X-Acto knife to make images. And she's from the Pacific Northwest. Some of her early work was used for like Riot Grrrl bands.
Very cool.
Yeah, like t-shirts and merch and stuff. She's also done like children's books and so on. But yes, I got my calendar, and it's really good.
What do you do with? Is it a display on the wall calendar?
Yeah,
is it
yeah. No, it's a display on the wall calendar because as one of my cult favorites in an earlier episode was my slingshot planner.
That's right.
And so I have that as my like walk around planner.
But
then in my office, I have my Nikki McClure calendar there on the wall.
Do you write on it, or is it just there?
No, it's just an image that gives you the like numbers for the dates and then like, I don't know, the phases of the moon or whatever.
Okay.
So that's my cult favorite, I guess.
Okay.
It arrived in the mail and it was like a little.
That's amazing.
A little gift. Yes.
Okay, this is not really my cult favorite, but I texted you this last week, and I just need to note it.
I'm here for it.
That the Taylor Frankie Paul of Secret Lives of Mormon Wives fame is the next Bachelorette in a bizarre term.
I got that text like after I had dinner, like while I was kind of like winding down. And it was like the perfect, it was like you had poured me an aperitif, like a little, I guess it would be a digestif. I guess it would be like a post dinner, like
it's an amazing sipper. I mean, and like for folks who don't watch these Bachelor franchise, the Bachelor franchise is in chaos right now. It's falling apart.
Oh, I don't know anything about that.
It's dying.
So
it is dying on the vine. They tried to redo Bachelor in Paradise, which was the show that got me into the whole thing. And I couldn't get through I could not get through the first episode. It was terrible.
Bachelor in Paradise, like as opposed to Bachelor like in desert or what?
Well, so if the people who don't, if you don't get on if you don't, have a relationship coming off the show, the Bachelor in Paradise is where they put those people on an island. And they date each other and they get voted off. It was great when I first started watching it, but it's really fallen off. And they tried to like reboot it and redo it, and they like stole a bunch of stuff from other shows, but then didn't execute them well.
Okay.
So the Bachelorette has kind of been canceled, and then Hulu picked it up from ABC. It's not on ABC anymore. It's on Hulu only.
But Taylor Frankie Paul has a relationship with Hulu thanks to Secret Lives of Mormon Wives.
And actually, if you were paying attention out there, Secret Lives of Mormon Wives trailer was on the finale of The Bachelorette before the first season, and so there's been this connection, and now Taylor it is very funny because if you're like me and look at the Reddit fan base of all this, the fan response has been very frustrated. They do not like this.
Interesting.
Because the audience that watches The Bachelorette is not the audience who watches Secret Lives of Mormon Wives.
Interesting.
And one of the big complaints has been the number of people with domestic violence or racist posts or whatever that keep accidentally quotation marks, scary quotes, get cast on the show in various ways. And it's interesting. They're pointing, and a lot of these are the men who have domestic violence issues. They're pointing to her, in the first episode, she gets arrested for the fight with her boyfriend. Yeah. They're pointing to that and saying, oh, another person that we knowingly know, blah, blah, blah.
Interesting.
So I don't know what's going to happen. If it's going to be any good.
That text was like the perfect distillation. It was like the square, like if you throw a dart into a bullseye of the Venn diagram of all things Mike Altman. It was a beautiful.
I wrote, I said, this is the.
It made me so happy.
I said, you're the only person I know who will fully understand this. That's not my cult favorite though. That's just a public service announcement.
Yes.
And we'll see if I don't know when that show debuts. I would love to have the time and energy to do like a bonus episode on the first episode. But
yeah,
okay,
one of these days we've got just like a trove,
so many ideas
for bonus episodes.
I do have a cult favorite though.
Give it to us.
Do you know who Queso is?
No.
He's a YouTube streamer.
Okay.
So he's a YouTube streamer.
Yes.
So I got a video on TikTok about a woman complaining about her trip to a water park.
Okay.
And a lawsuit about it. And I was like, what is this? And I start digging. And so apparently there is so this guy Queso, who my kids know, was playing, there's this video game, Water Park Tycoon, where you like make your own water park. Kind of like The Sims or SimCity, but for a water park.
Okay.
He did a whole long stream making this insane water park called Goob Lagoon.
Goob Lagoon. Got it.
And this thing, the stream became this sort of ongoing story that they were telling about this fictional water park.
Okay.
To the point that other people then, because the rides he built were so dangerous, started making videos about their visits to this fictional water park and how much they've been injured.
Ruh-roh.
To the point that there is a goob-lagoon-lawsuit.com and there is a number of like videos of people talking about their ongoing fictional lawsuits.
This is such a fun like digital age hoax story.
And then
we need to get American
there's a
hysteria
video
on this.
of a truck, I don't know where this was, driving through a city where someone had paid, one of those trucks with the LED boards, had paid to put up a Goob Lagoon ad in real life on the truck. So you can go to goob-lagoon-lawsuit.com.
You can, but may I just issue a little warning, because I did click on that and I thought that my computer had been hacked. Like, because it's like a duck flashing at you, and there's like, I don't know, like casino numbers rolling and
Frivolous Jape and Guffaw LLP. Yeah, it's a whole, so it's basically a place where someone has started to amass all of this online thing. It's amazing. It's, if you're like me and you're interested in this whole idea of kayfabe, it's I used it in class to explain hyperreality.
Okay, sure.
And
sure.
It's like Jean Baudrillard would love, like, this is the article of Jean Baudrillard at the water slide at Goob Lagoon. It's a whole thing. So it's if you just, if it's a Saturday and you're just done with the real world, just dive in. Literally, no pun intended, dive into Goob Lagoon, because you might not walk afterwards.
Avoid the shallow end.
There you go. Yes. And actually, that's a segue. I think before we go next time.
Oh.
I think we're doing that Ruby Frank documentary, aren't we?
Are we?
Speaking of streamers? I think we are.
Okay.
Ruby and Jody.
Which was another one, just like what is it called, listeners? What is the sociological? Is it a marketing? Is it an economic phenomenon where a Walgreens and a CVS always get built catty corner to each other on the same city block? So too, the phenomenon recreates itself in documentary
of cults
drops. Yes, because there are like two.
There's a Hulu one.
There's a Hulu one, but then there's also a.
This one has your word in it, though. This is Ruby and Jody, a cult of sin and influence.
Okay, and where
HBO
is
Max.
that one? That one's on HBO Max again.
Yeah.
HBO is really trying to corner the market, as it were.
HBO and Netflix
are the ones that kind of.
That's the. I mean, there's the occasional Hulu, but most of those are produced elsewhere, I think. But which. Okay. Anyways, I think that's where we're headed next week.
I have been avoiding this story so much.
Me too. I know nothing about it.
I have been avoiding it. I had just enough like declarative sentences about it that I was just like, nope.
Declarative
and
sentences.
just like, this is this person. Here's what she did, and I like. So I'm.
Well,
but for the sake, I am so committed to this cause that I'm going to watch it, and I'm going to have.
Friend of the show and our colleague Hannah Young had texted us a while back about the first one.
Yes.
But this one has cult in the subtitle and sin.
All right.
So I feel like it's ripe for next.
Okay.
We're doing welcome to our production meeting. But yeah, we'll do that in 2 weeks.
My willingness to hop aboard the train that you're conducting on such fronts is also why admirable. I get those texts about The Bachelorette, and so I will continue
one day
to do so because
yes,
I like having.
Just think of all the things you would not have known about and better off.
Oh
not
my
knowing
god,
about
dude!
Without this.
So many things. I'm here for it.
And that'll be episode 40. Thanks for listening, everybody, and thanks for the Department of Religious Studies for the microphone, even the one that broke. And
Muppet Mike.
Muppet Mike.
It's just very fluffy. It's floofy.
Is.
It looks like a microphone that a Muppet would use for a bit.
Yeah,
that's all.
Yeah. My interest in the number of microphones I bought for this project out of I now like if I see a podcast video somewhere, I'm like,
you know what it is. Yeah.
But yeah, and so thanks for the microphones for the Department of Religious Studies, and follow us on the socials at Cult Favorite Pod, and we'll see you on 2 weeks.
See you next time.